Hello, my name is Richard Samus, and I'll be the host for the SMILE program today. This program should last less than an hour, and I'll be using a PowerPoint presentation. I'll share that with you now. I'm an attorney with the Berrien County Family Division. I'll explain what that is in a minute. SMILE is an acronym for Start Making It Livable for Everyone. Now, before we start, I need to make sure you get credit for watching this presentation. There are two small tasks to ensure that you get credit. First, you'll find a 4-digit code embedded in the video sometime during my time with you. I'll point it out so you don't miss it. Please write it down. Second, after the video is over, you'll see a short quiz on the same web page as the video. You'll answer 5 questions about the video, including entering the 4-digit code. Now, the quiz is easy. It's just about things you saw in the video. But take the quiz right away. The quiz, the questions, and the 4-digit code change on a regular basis. All of you are going through a divorce or the end of a relationship, a stressful time in your life, to say the least. It's both a beginning and an ending, an ending. This presentation is intended to help you through the emotional and legal pitfalls of a divorce or a breakup, and also to discuss how your children can emerge from the process with as little trauma as possible. How can we keep them out of your divorce? Now, the experts tell us that everyone experiencing a divorce or the severing of a relationship goes through emotional stages. For some who can remain friends in the end, stages are minimal. In the most severe cases, professional intervention can be required. Some will go through these stages more than once. Others will change the order of the stages. The first stage is denial, the idea that this can't be happening to me. Denial protects us against shock, can insulate us from loneliness and depression. This is natural. The second stage is bargaining, usually when one of the parents wants to save the relationship. Hey, I'll change. We can go to counseling. This stage becomes frustrating if the other person won't negotiate. Next comes anger, the stage we most often see in court. Anger can be directed at oneself, your ex-spouse, and occasionally at the children. Anger is usually followed by acute depression. That's when one person admits the end of the relationship is permanent. Fear about being alone is common. People tend to get by on a day-at-a-time basis. Future planning is nearly impossible. Taking care of a child or children during this time can be difficult. Fortunately, depression is only temporary. The good news is that everyone eventually gets to acceptance. Life becomes stable and hope emerges. You can better focus on the future and a new life. Now, you're not alone in going through these stages. Hopefully your behaviors or those of your ex now make more sense after hearing about these stages. The good news is that each stage is temporary, with the exception of acceptance. Be wary of the trauma to your children during these stages, though. Some people believe it's inevitable that children will be affected by their breakup, that it's unavoidable. Before this presentation is over, I hope to convince you that you're in control of how your children are affected by your divorce or the breakup of your relationship. It's a decision you have within your power. All right, we're going to do something different, talk about mediation. Mediation is a procedure where parties discuss their disputes with the assistance of a trained, neutral third party, usually an attorney. This person will assist you in reaching a settlement. Now, this mediation can be voluntary between the parties, or a judge can order it. In Berrien County, the cost is reasonable, especially when compared to the cost of an attorney in a contested case. The hourly rate is split equally between the two parties. The success of mediation is tied to the willingness of both parties to keep an open mind and invest themselves in the process. If a complete settlement can't be reached, well, it's not uncommon for at least some of the issues to be resolved. And now each of the parties, they know where each other stands. This can open the door to further negotiations. A common mistake in settling divorce cases is where one or both of the parties glosses over some of the contentious issues. When I was a private attorney, I often had a client consult with me because he or she had given away everything to the other party, whether it was the house, custody of the children, the bank accounts, just to get the darn thing over with. 6 months later, they were kicking themselves for being on the short end of a lopsided settlement. Unfortunately, as an attorney, there wasn't much I could do. Property settlements are usually pretty permanent. And there has to be a good reason to change custody, not just that you gave up too easily. A good mediator will prevent all of this. They'll make sure the parties face up to all the issues involved in disentangling two persons' lives. A successful mediation decreases the chance of coming back after your divorce for further litigation. Okay, so next we're going to watch a video produced in Oakland County. You're going to see 3 people who deal with challenges in divorce, especially as it relates to children. Their challenges are probably going to seem a little more severe than what you might be going through. But I think you're going to find out all of these people get to the other side. So I hope you enjoy this video. I like it a lot.
I found a phone, and I realized it was a phone that she was using just to talk to him. All my worries and questions and all that were answered.
I just got really scared that my dad would kind of do something.
There was a lot of time that I was alone and spending with the kids.
A lot of things happened that wasn't necessarily positive for a young couple. I started living in my car full time.
I was a little mad because I didn't want to have to pick a parent.
And it put me in a position, obviously, to be a dad with a broken number of families.
I committed a crime out of anger.
I think we both failed in that department just because we just didn't want to deal with it.
Then when I had my daughter, things got a little rough. We were both young. It was a lot to do.
I kind of hated myself for a while of what I kind of built. Staying here and fighting for what I have, which is not much, but it's a lot to me.
I was married at 19. I got divorced at 24. It was a lot of pressure because I didn't want to be a divorcee at 24. I'm like, how can I? This just shows automatic failure. A lot of things happened that wasn't necessarily positive for a young couple. I had just graduated from college. Then when I had my daughter, things got a little rough. We were both young. It was a lot to deal with. And I think it took a toll on our situation. I tried to cut on the heat because it was a little cold. I don't hear anything. I don't feel nothing. So I put in a work order online. And that week turned into like a month. And they hadn't did anything. And I'm like, this is dangerous. Like, I can't keep sleeping in this house. It's getting cold. It's illegal. Like, I don't want to lose my daughter. If somebody find out about this, like, it's just going to be bad. So I started living in my car full time. I had to make a decision. I got to give my daughter to this man who really don't like me that much, but it's her father.
I was the one that filed for divorce. It wasn't just blindsiding me. I did it. But then I wasn't prepared to deal with the loneliness that comes afterwards. You're keeping it all inside. You're embarrassed. You're embarrassed you're getting divorced. No less, you're embarrassed that, to have to go around and be like, oh yeah, my wife's cheating on me. That's embarrassing. I built it up like a volcano, and eventually it just came out of me. I had a running in with Jennifer where she was just giving me a hard time about the kids. Then she was threatening to not let me see the kids.
My life then till now has always been, I guess, me trying to search where I want to be. Graduated high school, went to college for a year and then decided to go to the military. I wanted to, I guess, be important to somebody. I wanted to feel like I was important to somebody. I wanted to, be the master of my own future. So I'm like, hey, so why not just go check out the military? And I went in for 8 years. I was a medic. Well, Isaiah and Dorian, I had them when we were in Missouri. Their mom's Liz, and she lives in Arkansas now. Gavin was next, and his mom's Nikki. Olivia was next with Jess, and Aiden is the youngest, and his mom's, Alyssa. So I got 5 kids, 4 mothers, and which was the biggest juggle of my life. I guess the lack of knowledge of how to be in a relationship or how a relationship's supposed to be put me in a position, obviously, to be a dad with a broken number of families. So I kind of hated myself for a while of what I kind of built, what kind of family I built, until I realized what I had. If things do get a little harder, I think about my mom's. She had 18 of her own, and then she raised several of her daughter's kids. So me having 5 kids is normal. Because when they're all gone, I am lost. I have no idea who I am. I don't want to be home because I don't have to cook a giant meal. I can't cook just for myself. So I either work all the time or I just hibernate in my room somewhere.
Once we had went to court and we had said everything that we were going to go do, I ended up submitting paperwork that I moved to this place. I was able to start seeing my daughter more regularly, but I used to wonder, like, wow, will me and my ex-husband ever get to a point where we're like friends again? Or where we could see each other and not argue? The same passion you fell in love with typically is the same passion you have when you divorcing that person. It's the same. Everything that you would give to a person because you really love them is everything you're willing to do because that person is going to hurt you.
I was a little mad because I didn't want to have to pick a parent.
The children don't know how to really handle this adjustment. It's all new to them. So you'll see more anxiety. You might see a decrease in academic functioning. Obviously, some sadness, maybe some depression that might follow, or irritability. Validating that emotion for these children, letting them know, I see that you're sad. I see that you're upset about this. Letting them know that they have that voice and it's okay.
Going to prison, being out of the kids' lives for that long, it really put things into perspective for both me and her, I believe.
Well, it wasn't easy. It was obviously very hard on the kids. It was a day-to-day experience. You never knew if they were going to be sad, angry, any emotion that any human being's going to have. I mean, first you're angry about it, then you're sad about it, then you accept it, and then you deal with it, and then all of a sudden they're back, and you're like, holy cow, now we got to experience this whole other aspect of it.
What we wanted to do is tell parents that we understood what they were going through, dealing with the emotions of family breakup, or that if children are out of wedlock, that they want to be able to see children. So what they're going through is real and normal, and it's not something they should be ashamed of. And then we would provide education to help them through that process, and also let them know that their children are going through the same thing at the same time. When parents decide to divorce, it's an adult decision. But for children, it's almost like a drive-by shooting. They're just sitting there, and all of these things just happen to change their life.
Parents have to love their child more than they dislike the other parent. The bottom line is if the parents can't cooperate, communicate, co-parent, it's going to hurt their child. And then they're going to have a stranger in a black robe make decisions for their household.
I didn't want to be told, this is what you're supposed to have. My whole life was, this is what you're supposed to have. My whole life was, this is who you're supposed to be. I didn't know what I'm supposed to be or what I want to be, and I wanted to be dad. So I just fought for what I know my kids needed, and it was a right to see both parents.
I'm just waiting for them to actually stop arguing and get along more often and stop fighting over the simplest stuff. I honestly don't think about the choices they make. As long as I get to see them both at a certain time, I'm fine with it, as long as I get to see them.
It kind of just makes you step back and realize, like, oh, it wasn't all my fault, or it wasn't all his fault. We were both accountable. We both were at fault.
First, you want to push the blame on everybody else. Eventually, you get to the point where you're just saying, all I can control is myself, and all I can do is look at the bright side of things.
So once I realized like my problems and my faults, and I was willing to look in the mirror and look at the things that I needed to work on, we made it where we don't have to see each other too much. When we do see each other, it's at the school plays or events, and Ali is happy because both her parents are there. It's never like hostile anymore.
And even if that parent has done things that they shouldn't have, if they're not good parents, you have to remember that parent and that child are still connected, and they feel responsibility, and they feel hurt.
Sometimes I just drop things. Sometimes we discuss things and get things worked out. Sometimes I just bite my tongue. And she does the same with me. I know she does. We've got kids together, so that's what it comes down to. Ultimately, we just have to work towards raising the kids together.
I realize a lot of people's emotions get tied into it, and it ends up being about how your parenting relationship is going versus how we should do for the kids. Our kids learn 90% of what they need to know in life from us. They can go outside and experience a lot outside this house, a lot. But still, what they saw here first is what they saw here first. If you don't give them something to compare to what they see outside, that's what they're gonna hold on to.
Right now, they're little sponges, right? They're picking up everything that these parents are doing. They're modeling long-term, how do you handle conflict? What should a normal or healthy household look like? And so it's so important that you're modeling good structure, good communication, problem solving, healthy coping skills, all of these things that are gonna set the tone for when they're off away from your house, whether they're in college or living by themselves, having their own families. They're picking up so much from what mom and dad are doing in the household.
You don't have to always argue with the other parent, and you don't have to send messages back through the child with the other parent.
I think it's really awesome because I don't have to choose who I like best. I just get to hang around both of them, and I don't got to choose no sides. So that's really cool.
Even though you're no longer going to be related to each other because of the split up, that it is important to understand that you're still family to the same children. And a child will hold back from you if they feel you don't want to know or hear about what their true feelings are. By giving the child the right to love the other parent, you are in fact opening a door between you and your own child that will never be closed. An example would be a case that I was involved in where the parents did not get along. They didn't talk to each other. But the child came back one day from a parenting time and went to the dad's house, and he was living primarily with his dad at that time, and said, "My mom's not going to get me next Wednesday night." And the father said, "Well, why not?" And he said, "Because she's getting an award of Employee of the Year." And he thought for a second, and he was going to say, "Well, it's great she's such a fantastic employee. It's too bad she's such a lousy mother." But he didn't. He held his tongue this time, and he thought about what he learned from Smile. And he went to the phone, and he called the flower shop to order flowers to be delivered to the mother on that day that she was going to be given an award. And when they asked for the card that they wanted with the flowers, he said, "Mom, I'm very proud of you. I love you." And he signed his son's name. Now his son heard this, and he said, "Wow, Dad, why'd you do that?" He said, "Because it's the right thing to do." Remember, children learn from what you tell them, but they'll remember from what they see and what they experience. Well, a few days later, when the event occurred, he told me, this man who did this, that he got a phone call. The phone rang, and his son answered the phone, and it was his mother. And she said, and she was crying, he said, that "I just got your flowers. And no award they could have given me today would have been more important than the flowers I got from you." And he said when his son hung up the phone, he went over to him and he gave his dad a hug and a kiss, which was something that he normally received from his child. They were demonstrative. However, he said he felt something from his child that day that he had never felt before. And he realized the flowers may have been a gift to his ex-spouse, who he really didn't like, but the flowers was something that opened a door between him and his child, because it told his child that he had the right to love his mother, and he could share that with the father. And that was something that may have been done for the ex-wife, but it was a bond in a relationship that can never be changed between the father and the child.
Like if I call him now and be like, hey, can you take Lily? He won't do it every day, but he'll be like, okay, this sounds important, let me help. Or for example, they didn't have arts and crafts on Friday, so Lily called me. I was in the middle of working, but because I have a highly flexible job, I told her I would be there in 20 minutes. So I didn't get mad at Aaron or say like, hey Aaron, you wasn't here to pick up the baby, what's going on? I was just like, I don't know what's going on. I'll ask questions later, let me just go pick her up. And then he called me apologizing. I know this is your day to work. I don't want you to have to take off work. I'm sorry. That wasn't the response I was gonna get 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? It's a progression, and I do feel like anybody can achieve whatever they want if they look at their schedule and try to make it work for them. It took years. It wasn't like an overnight thing. Pressure, it either breaks pipes or makes diamonds, and I feel like I came out a diamond because I didn't let the pressure break me.
We believe that there's never too much information you can give the other parent. You need to treat the other parent how you want to be treated. You need to extend an olive branch. You need to be kind, considerate, classy, and professional. And that way, hopefully the other side will see that, appreciate it, and treat you the same way.
You know, staying angry at somebody is only hurting you. It's not hurting them. And that's what it comes down to. It bleeds too much into every other aspect of your life. You can't go on and have a normal relationship with somebody else. And you can't have a relationship with your own kids.
It wasn't very, I guess, fun when they still wouldn't get along. It would always kind of make me afraid, and then I didn't really like it. So, I mean, it makes me feel a lot better now that they all get along. Like when they started getting along, I'm like, well, maybe we can just like start hanging out more and like just see each other.
They didn't get along so well, like they couldn't talk without like arguing about something. So now they can like actually have a conversation, and like they could like it's basically like they're friends. It's way better like than it was. I love it.
They helped me as far as being able to communicate with my kids, salvaging my relationship with my family. And I had a parenting class I took actually through Oakland County. They helped me better communicate with my kids' mom. I'm grateful to it. My kids are, I'm sure, grateful because they see me happier now these days. They see that I'm more relaxed and I'm not just tense, I'm not just here. I'm actually in it.
Playing games with each other, hanging out. It's pretty nice overall.
I actually became dad and not just the man that's actually providing for you. And they became my kids and not just somebody I'm protecting. It breaks my heart, even today. The thought of your kids, like, you have kids, so the thought of your kids wondering what dad or mom's thinking, or why can't dad or mom play with me, just breaks your heart. So I never really got when people bragged about their kids until I started being able to talk more about my kids. I started taking joy in that my kids make me happy. I take joy knowing that I'm actually making my kids happy. Why can't I just enjoy my kids and be a parent? So now I'm enjoying these crazy nutballs, man, and you know what I mean? And it's just, I don't know. I'm happier now because they're happy, so.
I acted wrong. I was, I didn't, I should have did things differently. We got to that point because of my situation that I put myself into. I hope that other people can get to that point without going through the same situation I went through.
Well, as I said, I really enjoy that video. I think it's really well done, and I appreciate that Oakland County is willing to share that with us. All right, so let's go back to my PowerPoint presentation, talk a little bit about courts and the friend of the court. So everyone understands pretty much the function of a judge, but you may find yourself in front of an attorney referee like myself. Now, there are two main differences. Attorney referees aren't elected, we're hired employees, and we don't wear robes. We otherwise hear cases just like a judge does. Now, you'll always have the opportunity to appeal a decision from a referee to a family court judge. Friend of the court is the agency that assists the court primarily in the areas of child support, custody, and parenting time. They're advocates for your children. There's so much stress in divorce and child custody disputes that the friend of the court employees often get the blame when things go wrong. Well, let's face it, it's hard to complain directly to a judge. In reality, the friend of the court is doing the best they can to help. So some of the functions of the friend of the court: they help gather pay stubs and tax returns to help to determine a fair amount of child support. They interview parties and give recommendations regarding custody and parenting time when disputes arise. If you're having problems, the other party is denying you parenting time, or maybe they won't cooperate and pick up and drop off of your children, your domestic investigator should be your first stop to get answers. They often can help settle disputes without court intervention. They have resources that they can help you with some of the problems you're having. Now, it helps to know the different divisions of the friend of the court. I've already started to mention domestic investigators. There's one assigned to every case, whether it's custody, parenting time, or just child support. They help enforce custody and parenting time provisions and orders. Many people going through a divorce see them as the valuable resource that they are. Now, one little tip: they're in court a lot. If you call, leave a message, they will get back to you. Now, there's an enforcement division at the friend of the court, and it's their responsibility to enforce the financial aspects of court orders. If you're the person who isn't getting child support checks, you'll appreciate their help. On the other hand, if you're struggling to make child support payments, call them. They'll listen. There's an accounting department with lots of people who are good with numbers. If you don't understand why you're behind on child support, or why you're not receiving as much support as you think you should be receiving, an accountant will sit down with you and go over the numbers. It's a great service for you. Finally, the friend of the court has lots of support people who will take your calls, meet you at their window. They deal with a lot of stressed out people. Their job's not an easy one. When it's your turn, please make their day a little easier. Okay, so you're in court. Either you're set for trial in your divorce or custody case, or perhaps you've come back to court after your divorce over a parenting time dispute, or maybe over child support. You might or might not have an attorney representing you. Should you go to trial? If you decide to actually go through a contested hearing, understand that a judge or an attorney referee hearing your case will only get a glimpse into your life and your ex's life and that of your children. Our job is to use our experience to make tough decisions based on a minimum amount of information, often limited to an hour or two of testimony. Now, I do this willingly. That's why I took this job. I hope my decisions are fair and just. Your other option, as difficult as it may be in some cases, is to talk to the other party and try to reach an agreement. You both understand the challenges facing each other and the needs of your children. An agreement reached by compromise may be the better solution and better than what a judge or an attorney referee could decide. As an attorney, I often advise my clients that the best divorce settlement was when both parties walk away equally unhappy. I think that still applies. Another major decision you'll have is whether to hire a lawyer or represent yourself. Certainly your finances will play a role here. Do know that attorneys come in all range of prices. Some experienced lawyers charge a reasonable fee while others require sizable retainers. If the first lawyer you call wants a whole lot of money up front, don't give up, keep calling. It pays to seek advice from friends or to keep calling and getting quotes. Now, representing yourself is difficult. Our hearings are not like People's Court or Judge Judy. A referee, just like a judge, has to conduct the hearings pursuant to Michigan rules of evidence. Hearsay evidence is normally not permitted. Documents are often not admitted. I had a case about 6 months ago involving an 11-year-old boy whose parents shared custody, 1 week with one parent, the next week with the other, and so on. The mother's doctor diagnosed the boy as severe ADHD and prescribed a healthy dose of Adderall. The father had a doctor examine the boy, and this doctor disagreed. He thought the boy just needed more discipline and was over-medicated. Well, as a result, the boy was spending 1 week with his mother on medication, and you guessed it, the following week with his father off medication, and back and forth. The case was assigned to me, and I'd have to make the difficult decision after listening to the medical evidence. On the day of the hearing, the mother arrived with an attorney who knew to subpoena the mom's doctor, who was present and testified. The father, for whatever reason, was not represented by an attorney. He tried to hand me the medical report from his doctor. The mom's attorney objected, and I had to deny this evidence because it's hearsay. You can't cross-examine a piece of paper. I never got to hear from the father's doctor. I only heard half the case that day because the father, without an attorney, could not admit his evidence. I decided the case for the mother. I wish I could have heard the whole case. The moral of this story is represent yourself at your own risk. We often have to dismiss cases when people represent themselves because of their lack of knowledge. We do this reluctantly. If you do represent yourself, make sure you do your homework before coming to court. Make sure your witnesses are present and prepared to testify. Understand what hearsay evidence is. Now, there's a self-help office on the second floor of the St. Joe Courthouse dedicated to people who have to represent themselves. Now, the people that work there won't give you legal advice, but they'll help you with the forms and where to file them. The staff of this office frequently comes to Niles Courthouse as well. So next, let's talk about custody, because the term custody can be confusing because the court recognizes two different kinds of custody: legal custody and physical custody. Now, physical custody is pretty much like it sounds, where the child lives, spends most nights. Physical custody can be shared between two parents. Legal custody is usually shared, although it's possible for one parent to have sole legal custody. When parents share legal custody, they share in making the important decisions in a child's life. Let's just say the custodial parent wants to take the child out of public school and place the child in a private school or parochial school, or maybe even homeschool the child. This is a decision that has to be made jointly where there's joint legal custody. The custodial parent needs to call the other parent and explain the situation. If the other parent disagrees, compromise can't be reached, the case needs to be brought into court. Now, hopefully, both parents have been discussing the child's education all along, and a joint decision is easy. Note that regardless of who has physical custody, Parenting time can always be split up in imaginative ways to give the child as much time as possible with each parent. In normal circumstances, the court favors both parents being involved fully in the child's life. Now, a few words about child support. As over the years, it's very possible you'll have to have your support modified as circumstances change involving jobs and parenting time. Child support is determined by a formula based on the gross income of each party. We don't take expenses into account when calculating the amount. Consider this example. Two unrelated people make the same gross income. They support the same number of children, and they spend the same number of overnights with their children. Just pretend all other factors are equal. One drives a beater, like the one in this picture, has no car payment. Not sure that car can be driven, but the other party drives a brand new Mercedes, owing $900 a month on a lease. All right, do we lower the payment for the second person? No. The result here is that both will pay the same amount of child support. While this can lead to hardships in some cases, it's the only way to be fair. If someone voluntarily quits their job, we assume that person has the ability to work, and we will impute income based on his or her last salary. Now, it's different if you're laid off or if you're fired with no fault of your own. Next, please fill out the questionnaire that's sent to you in contested cases. We need to know your circumstances. We need to know if your children are in daycare and you're paying for that. Or maybe you're the one covering the cost of medical insurance for your children through your employer. It's all about making accurate and fair child support recommendations. The best resources for questions regarding custody, parenting time, and child support, and a multitude of other issues is the Friend of the Court Handbook. When I became an attorney referee, I read it twice, and I refer to it frequently. The handbook is available at no cost through the Friend of the Court. I believe they'll even send it to you if you ask. Okay, now let's do something different. Let's play games. Well, actually, let's talk about games. Games people play in shared custody situations. Not that any of you would do any of these things, but knowledge is power. I Spy is a game some parents play where their children are asked to report on activities of the other parent. Hey, does mom still keep the vodka in the cabinet under the TV? Is dad still seeing that sleazy redhead? I had a recent case where the mother had her daughter clandestinely taking photos inside the father's home. Children often complain to counselors about being forced to do this. It can be emotionally damaging to your children. Warring parents often play this game of messenger because they can't stand to talk to each other. And they use their children to communicate. You tell your mother, if I don't get that support check in the mail by tomorrow, or you tell your mother if I don't get, if I'm through doing all the transportation, he'll do the driving tomorrow. Well, needless to say, children don't want to be involved in the parents' fights. With technology that we have today, there is no excuse to involving your children like this. The next game is I've Got You, Babe. Divorced parents can be overwhelmed, and they miss the companionship that was part of the marriage. They often look to a child to fill the gap. They invite the child to be a friend. Hey, let's just hang out. The truth is, the child still needs the guidance of their parents until they reach adulthood and often beyond. So avoid this trap. The money game is where, well, let's just face it, many parents struggle financially when forced to run a household with just one income. I've seen very few situations where two people split up into two incomes in two households and don't struggle financially. These money problems can spill out to the children. Hey, You may have to charge your laptop at school. I don't know how much longer I can keep the electric on. This kind of talk can really scare your children, even lead them to believe they're to blame. The name game. This one has to be the most damaging of all. The things parents will say in front of their children. That rotten, no good son of a blank father of yours, or that lying, cheating, low-life mother of yours. Children learn at a fairly early age that half of their DNA is made up of that parent that you're calling worthless and no good. That child decides half of them is no good. And what if they hear this kind of talk from both parents? And we wonder why kids from broken families have problems. For the sake of your children, consider doing the opposite. Consider building up the other parent in front of them. Honey, I know your father isn't working right now, but when he does work, he's a really hard worker. Or, look, I know mom's going through a rough patch right now, but she's strong. She'll get through this. She's a fighter. There can be a lot of anger when parents split up. Your words around your children have lasting, long-lasting consequences for them, which is what we're going to look at now. ACEs is the most important study ever made about child trauma and its causes. It was started in California in 1995 by two doctors interested in the effects of child trauma and whether it led to obesity in adults. I might be just a tad overweight. They expanded the research to additional effects of trauma. And what they discovered just shocked the world. I attended a presentation by a researcher who worked for one of these doctors. She said that when the doctor first saw the compiled data, he wept. At first, other experts in the field rejected the findings of these two doctors, but other studies quickly verified their results over and over again. Now, ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. The study focused on just 10 types of trauma to children. The first, physical abuse, other than normal spanking. Emotional abuse, serious threats and humiliation. Sexual abuse of any kind. Physical neglect, perhaps leaving your children alone, letting them go hungry. Emotional neglect, scaring the children with constant yelling and fighting. The sixth thing is a parent who is mentally ill or chronically depressed. Next comes domestic violence in the home. Children not raised by both biological parents. One parent in jail or in prison. And finally, a parent who is an alcoholic or drug abuser. There's a test you can take online. And while I'm mentioning that, feel free to Google what I'm talking about. Just Google the word ACEs in children or children in trauma. You'll find so much about the ACEs study. And you'll find this test online, or you can just go through like I did and kind of analyze these different factors. For me, I had two ACEs. One was emotional neglect. My parents yelled and argued almost every night. And this is back when kids didn't have earbuds or smartphones to block out the noise. And from age 12 on, I wasn't raised by both of my biological parents. So I figure I had two ACEs. So let's look at children with 1 to 3 ACEs, which I would fall into. What is the effect of those children when they finally reach adulthood? It's shocking. Almost twice as many of these children will smoke cigarettes. Almost 10 times as many will become alcoholics. Let me repeat that. And I've got to go back in my 1 in 69 will become alcoholics with no ACEs. 1 in 9 will become alcoholics with 1 to 3 ACEs. So 10 times as many adults will attempt suicide with 1 to 3 ACEs as a child, and 10 times as many will use IV drugs. Next comes the one that took everyone by surprise. A child with 1 to 3 ACEs will have double the chance of developing heart disease as an adult. The #1 killer of adults. And that's not all. Further research shows that children with 1 to 3 ACEs, children with ACEs of any kind, have increased levels of cancer, stroke, chronic lung disease, diabetes, a shorter life, and yes, obesity. Now, not all trauma is caused by 2 parents splitting up, but make no mistake, your children are at risk. All right, at this point, here's the embedded code. Please write it down. You'll enter it when you take a short quiz in a few minutes. So, as I indicated, my parents divorced when I was 12. Yes, I was cute back then. My mother had physical custody, and I saw my father every other weekend. I probably shouldn't say this, but my life actually improved. An amazing thing happened. I never, ever heard a negative word from either of my parents about the other one after they split up. I had been afraid of my father growing up, but now I enjoyed being with him. We played golf on Sunday afternoons. We went fishing together. I don't think either of us actually enjoyed fishing, but we liked to do it together. I became close to my father up until when I lost him 8 years ago. I have my mother to thank for this. She never said anything bad about him. She never gave me a reason not to get close to him. My mother and I became very close. We joined a small church together. My mother became the church secretary, even though she couldn't type to save her life. I typed all the minister's letters. We went to movies together, as long as we didn't go to the local theater where my friends might see me. I have my father to thank for my close relationship with my mother. He never gave me a reason not to become close with my mother. I used to tell my friends that I was from a lucky divorce. Heck, my parents even got together Christmas mornings to watch us kids open presents. What I didn't realize growing up is how hard this probably was for them. They certainly didn't like each other after the divorce, but I believe they got up every day and asked themselves, how can we keep Richard and our children out of our divorce? You know, the funny thing that even with 2 ACEs, I came out okay, reasonably healthy. As I said, touch overweight. But I believe my parents actually erased most of the effects of childhood trauma by their actions after they split up. I believe this is a phenomenon that will be proven by ACEs research in the future. If your children have faced trauma due to your split up, even before you're split up, I am a firm believer it can be reversed. My parents weren't extraordinary people. They weren't. If they can do this, you can do it as well. I truly believe whether you subject your children to trauma as a result of your divorce breakup or give them a safe landing on the other side is within your power. Perhaps one of the most important decisions you'll ever make in your lifetime. On behalf of the Berrien County Family Division, I hope you found this information helpful. Now, please take the short quiz located on the same web page you found this presentation. As I indicated, you'll find the quiz very easy because you watched this presentation. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Good luck.